I've spent most of my life in the woods. I suppose you could say I was born facing the wrong direction, away from people and toward the trees. Ever since I was a kid, I felt more at home watching ants build their little empires than sitting in classrooms full of voices. While other kids wanted city lights and loud music, I wanted moss, wind, and the creak of pines that never asked for anything. The forest made sense to me in a way that people never did. When I was 12, I could name every bird call by sound. I used to sit still for hours, waiting for a deer to appear, not to hunt it, just to see it. I learned how to move quietly enough that rabbits wouldn't run when I passed. I think they understood me somehow. Society never did. I tried once, went to college, got an office job, wore the tie, smiled when I was supposed to. But it all felt like pretending. Everyone chasing something invisible. Everyone afraid of silence. When an uncle I barely knew left me a small inheritance. Not much, but enough to live simply. I made my choice. No marriage, no children, no deadlines. Just me, a tent, a pair of boots, and the wild. I live frugally, sure. Second-hand gear, cheap food, the same old pickup truck. But out here, I'm rich, in a way the city people will never understand. Because the woods never lied to me. They just asked me to listen. This time, I decided to hike deeper than I ever had before. Miles beyond any trail, where even GPS lost its mind. The air felt cleaner there, colder, sharper, like the forest had never been touched by people. Each step sank softly into moss so thick it felt like walking on memory. The trees stood ancient and quiet, their trunks wrapped in green velvet and secrets. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the creak of bark, echoed like the woods were breathing with me. By the time the sun began to fade, I had found a clearing that felt almost sacred. A small open space at the base of an old mossy hill. I set up my camp there, my tent tucked between roots, the smell of pine and damp soil wrapping around me like a blanket. I remember how peaceful it felt, that rare, perfect kind of silence, where even your thoughts seemed to rest. The world felt still, as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for the night to begin. By midnight, I was deep inside my sleeping bag, exhausted, but content. My body ached in that good way, the kind that comes from miles of trail and clean air filling your lungs. The smell of pine, earth, and damp soil wrapped around me like a memory of every peaceful night I'd ever known. Somewhere far off, an owl called once, a single hollow note that drifted through the darkness. Then nothing. No wind, no insects, just silence so complete it felt like the world had forgotten to breathe. And then I woke up. No reason, no sound. Just that sudden, sharp awareness, the feeling when your body knows something your mind doesn't yet understand. I lay there, staring into the blackness of the tent, my heart ticking like a quiet metronome. The air felt heavier somehow, pressed down against me. At first I thought I was hearing wind, a faint, muffled murmur below me, like air moving through roots. Or maybe water, trickling through underground stone. But the longer I listened, the clearer it became. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't water. It was voices. Soft, muffled. Women's voices. They were coming from beneath me. Soft, distant. Female voices, distorted by layers of earth, like whispers wrapped in soil. They weren't talking. They were begging. Help, please, help us. The words seeped up through the ground like cold water, curling beneath my tent. I froze, afraid even to breathe. Then I sat up fast, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it felt like it would crack them open. It had to be a dream. It had to be. Or maybe the wind was passing through hollows under the hill. It could sound like that, right? Like voices carried by roots and dirt. But the voices didn't stop. They swelled, low at first, then rising and falling like waves. Some cried. Some whispered my name. And one, I swear, one of them laughed. I whispered to myself, "You're just tired. You're imagining it." Maybe I was hearing my own breath echoing back from the ground, distorted by fear. But deep down, I knew better. I stayed awake the rest of the night, staring at the tent ceiling, clutching the flashlight I never turned on. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I lit the inside of the tent, I might see shapes moving just outside. The whispers faded sometime before dawn. Or maybe they only grew too quiet for my human ears. When dawn came, everything looked normal. Birds sang. Sunlight filtered through the branches, dripping gold across the moss. The forest looked innocent again, clean, harmless, alive. For a while, I convinced myself it hadn't happened. Just exhaustion, nerves, the tricks of solitude. Until I saw the shoe. A single flat leather ballet shoe, weathered stiff, the color of old bone, hung from a branch by a piece of jute rope. It turned slowly in the morning light, swaying just enough to creak against the bark. It looked absurd, delicate, almost ceremonial, like someone had left it there on purpose, an offering, a warning, a memory. I walked closer, the moss muffling my steps. The air felt heavier, like the forest was holding its breath again. On a nearby tree, I saw another, this time a sneaker, its laces looped carefully and tied in the same way. The rope was old, frayed, but strong enough to last years. Then I noticed another, and another, all around the clearing. Shoes, dozens of them. All different sizes, colors, styles, but every single one was women's. I started counting, just to have something to focus on, something rational to hold on to. 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 37. 37 trees, each one with its own shoe, tied like a charm or a ritual, each one hanging still in the breathless morning air. My stomach twisted. The forest no longer felt like home. It felt like it was watching me. I decided to investigate. I needed an explanation. There had to be one. Some old hiker tradition, maybe. A memorial. Anything but what my mind was already starting to imagine. I took one last look at the clearing, the 37 trees, their strange trophies swaying in silence. Then I turned and began following what looked like a faint path leading deeper into the forest. Calling it a path was generous. It was little more than a line of disturbed moss, a subtle trail where the earth looked slightly pressed down like something or someone had passed through many times before. The farther I went, the quieter it became. No birds now, no rustling. Even the air seemed thicker, heavier to breathe. Branches arched over the trail like ribs closing in around me. Every now and then I caught glimpses of something pale between the trees. Maybe sunlight through the leaves. Maybe not. My boots sank softly into the damp ground. The smell of rot began to creep in, faint at first, like something spoiled far away. I told myself it was just a dead animal. That's what it always is, right? Just a fox or a deer. After what felt like half an hour. Maybe more. The forest suddenly opened up, and I saw it. A small cabin, rotting, half collapsed, half swallowed by trees and vines. The roof sagged inward, green with moss, the walls nearly hidden behind twisting roots that had grown straight through the wood. It looked ancient, abandoned for decades, a place the forest had tried to erase and only half succeeded. Something about it made my skin crawl. It didn't look built in the forest. It looked consumed by it. The door was jammed. It leaned inward on warped hinges, swollen by years of rain and time. The wood was soft, gray, furred with lichen, the grain splitting like old skin. I pressed my shoulder against it once. It didn't move. Twice. A dull groan answered from the frame. On the third try, it gave, cracking open with a sigh like something exhaling from the inside. No burst of stench, no wave of rot, just a faint, dry mustiness, the kind that fills forgotten attics and dead rooms. The air inside was cold, stale, and thin. It smelled faintly of rust, dust, and something metallic underneath. Old blood baked into wood, long dried but never truly gone. I stood there for a moment, half in, half out, the daylight pooling behind me and dying in the doorway. The forest outside looked alive, green and breathing. The interior was nothing but shadows. I switched on my flashlight. The beam swept across walls covered in peeling paint and scratch marks. Hundreds of them, shallow, uneven, like someone had clawed the wood with bare fingers long ago. Cobwebs hung in thick drapes from the ceiling beams, trembling with the smallest shift of air. The floorboards were warped and soft under my boots. Every step made a sound that didn't echo. It just sank, muffled, as if the wood was tired of being walked on. To the right of the door stood a metal table, long, heavy, its surface eaten by rust. A dark crust lined the edges, brown and black, like stains that had become part of the metal itself. The light caught something dull beside it, a cleaver, its blade oxidized to a reddish hue. It looked like a butcher's table, but bigger. Too big for deer, too low for comfort. It was built for something done in secret, something done often. Empty bottles lay in a corner, their glass clouded with dust. A tin ashtray overflowed with cigarette butts, melted together from damp. Scraps of fabric, torn, faded, unrecognizable, littered the floor near the table, pressed flat by time. I tried not to imagine what they had once been. My light drifted upward. Above the table, hooks dangled from a beam. Heavy iron hooks, rusted but solid. The kind used for hanging carcasses. They swayed slightly, though there was no wind. Further in, the room narrowed. A partition wall divided the space. Beyond it, something blocked part of my view. I could just make out the shape of an old chair, its back turned toward me. Before I moved closer, I took a slow look around. The windows were boarded from the outside, but thin cracks between planks let in threads of light, slicing the darkness into thin gray bars. Dust motes drifted through them like ash. And there, in the far corner, beneath one of those beams of gray, a pile of shoes. Women's shoes. Some leather, some canvas, some torn nearly apart. Pairs and singles all thrown together in a mound so dry they looked almost fossilized. They matched the ones hanging outside. The same shapes, the same quiet despair. I felt something pull tight in my chest. Whatever had happened here, the forest had tried to bury it. But it couldn't. Not completely. And that chair. Something about it demanded attention. It sat perfectly still in the half-dark, its back turned, facing a window that hadn't seen light in decades. My flashlight trembled as I raised it, slowly, the beam climbing from the legs of the chair, up the backrest, to what was sitting there. At first I thought it was a bundle of clothes. Then I saw the outline of a human form, a skeleton, the remains of a large man slumped as if still staring out that boarded window, jaw open in a silent sigh. His spine curved forward, his ribs collapsed inward like a cage long emptied. The air in my throat went cold. For a second, I thought he was moving, but it was only the flashlight shaking in my hand. I took a step back, the floor groaning under me, and the sound it made echoed through the cabin like a heartbeat waking up. Whoever had done this died here, maybe by his own hand, maybe not. Either way, I was done. I turned from the skeleton and stumbled for the door, bumping into the wall hard enough to rattle the hooks above the table. One of them creaked, slow and sharp, the sound of metal remembering blood. I didn't look back. I just ran, out of the cabin, out into the trees. The forest that had always felt like home now felt wrong. The air was thicker, heavier, like breathing through water. The smell of moss had turned sweet and sour, like wet iron. The light outside was almost gone. The last smear of dusk fading into blue and black. Shadows melted together until there was no clear path, only roots, fog, and instinct. Every step made too much noise. The forest should have answered. A branch breaking, an owl, a rustle. But it didn't. It just listened. Then I saw them. At first, I thought it was light between the trees, pale streaks moving in the distance. But as my eyes adjusted, the light took shape. Women, dozens of them, pale, colorless, standing in silence among the trunks. Their faces were the color of ash, their eyes two hollow pits that caught what little light remained. Their mouths were open but soundless, their expressions twisted in endless screams that never came out. Some were missing pieces, half a jaw, a hand that ended in roots. Others looked soaked, dripping with dirt that vanished before it hit the ground. They didn't move at first. They just watched me. Then one of them raised her arm, slow, jerky, like a puppet tugged by strings, and the rest followed. Hands reached out through the dark gray fingers trembling inches from my face. The forest came alive with a whispering hiss, like wind, but wrong, words hiding inside it. That broke me. I ran. Branches whipped my face. Roots clawed at my boots. The flashlight beam swung wildly, catching flashes of eyes, teeth, skin that faded as soon as I focused on them. Every time I looked back, more of them were there, closer, drifting through the fog, their feet not touching the ground. One brushed past me, cold as shadow, smelling faintly of old soil. Another leaned from behind a tree, her head tilted too far, neck cracked open like a hinge. Her mouth moved soundlessly, but inside it was nothing but black. I could hear heartbeats, not just mine, dozens, maybe hundreds, thumping under the ground, inside the trees, inside the air itself. The forest was alive, breathing, and I was running through its lungs. The path I'd followed earlier was gone. Every direction looked the same. The fog thickened, curling around the trunks like smoke from an invisible fire. I stumbled once, fell hard on my knees, and when I looked up, they were everywhere. A ring of pale faces watching from the edge of the mist, some closer than arm's reach. Their lips moved in unison, whispering something beneath the sound of my pulse. That was enough. I shoved myself up and ran blind, through branches that tore at my clothes, over roots that caught at my legs. My breath burned, my vision blurred. But finally, through the darkness, I saw the faint outline of my tent, my camp, the last fragile piece of the world that still made sense. I didn't slow down. I grabbed my pack, threw everything inside, didn't even care if it fit. The flashlight flickered once, and for a heartbeat, I saw a handprint smeared on the canvas of my tent, small, feminine, and black with soil. That's when I lost it. I tore through the trees, running until my legs screamed, until the forest thinned and gravel crunched beneath my boots. The outline of my car appeared through the fog like salvation. I threw myself inside, slammed the doors, and turned the key so hard it snapped off in the ignition. But the engine caught. The headlights cut through the mist, and for a moment I saw them again. A dozen pale figures at the tree line, standing perfectly still, watching. I didn't look back again. I drove straight to the nearest ranger station and called the police. I told them everything, almost everything. They found the cabin. I went back with the police the next morning, still half in shock, half sure that I'd imagined the whole thing. But when I led them to the clearing, their faces went pale. Even the most seasoned officer froze when he saw the shoes, 37 of them, swaying gently in the breeze, the ropes creaking like whispers. Inside the cabin, they found what I had seen, and more. The remains of 11 women, buried shallowly behind the hill. Bones tangled in roots, hair matted with soil. They'd been there for decades. The shoes tied to trees weren't random. They were markers, one shoe for each life taken. Each pair hung by the killer himself, a way of keeping count, or a way of making sure the forest remembered. For years, hikers had gone missing in this region. Local women, drifters, runaways, all between the early 90s and 2000s. They called him the Mosswood Killer, though no one ever proved he existed. Just stories, rumors about a man who lived off-grid, trapping more than just animals. And then, one day, he vanished. No arrests, no closure, just silence. Until I found his chair. The man sitting in it had been dead for 30 years. The bones confirmed it. What remained of his clothes matched the old description. Red flannel shirt, dark jeans, a knife sheath on the belt. Even his fingerprints, what was left of them, matched an unsolved file from 1994. The police said he must have died alone out there, possibly by his own hand. Some thought he got sick. Others believed the forest finally took him. They thanked me for finding him, for giving peace to the families who never got answers. But peace wasn't the word I'd use, because I didn't tell them about the voices, about the way the ground still seemed to hum under my boots when I stood near that hill. And I didn't tell them that, even now, weeks later, I still hear them. When the nights grow cold and the forest settles, when even the crickets stop their song and the air turns still, I sometimes lie awake in my cabin, staring at the ceiling. And that's when I hear it. That same muffled sound beneath the floor, like something shifting slowly through the soil. Not close, not far, just there. A low breathing pulse beneath the earth, too steady to be wind, too alive to be forgotten. Sometimes it's only a whisper, so faint I can barely catch it. Sometimes it's a hum, soft and rhythmic, like someone murmuring through water. And sometimes it becomes words. At first, they sounded almost gentle. A sigh, a trace of voices I thought I'd left behind under that hill. There was sorrow in them, almost peace. I thought maybe they were thanking me. But lately, it's changed. The voices come more often now, clearer, sharper, closer. They no longer sound grateful. They sound awake. Sometimes, when I rise before dawn and step outside, the ground feels warm beneath my feet, as if something deep below is stirring, stretching after a long, long sleep. And when the wind passes through the trees just right, it almost sounds like breathing. I used to love that sound. Now, I'm not so sure it's the wind. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Click the bell icon so you never miss any new content. Stay tuned for more creepy stories coming soon. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the dark, subscribe for more. Because the best horror isn't what you hear, it's what follows when the story is over.